Hello, and welcome to the first video in the My Opinion Site series. In this video, I'm going to talk about the failures of Western medicine, and in the process debunk some of the views Dave Farina expresses in his Quantum Mysticism video, and elsewhere on his YouTube channel, Professor Dave Explains. But first, just to be sure everybody knows what I'm talking about, I need to clarify some questions. Principally,
who is Alex Lee? What is Western medicine? Who are the American skeptics? Who is Dave Farina?
That's me. I'm a naturalized Taiwan citizen. I grew up in the UK in a society whose traditional herbal medicine knowledge had long fallen into disuse, sidelined by Western medicine. I'm not ethnically Chinese, and thus there's no element of ethnic pride in the views I'm going to present here. These are just views arrived at through first-hand experience, and I'll relate some of those experiences in this video. I have no vested interests in any kind of medical treatment or therapy. Western medicine is a system of medicine that treats symptoms and diseases using drugs, radiation, and/or surgery. And who would deny it? It's the single most successful system of medicine the world has ever seen. Also called allopathic medicine, and in Western countries called conventional medicine, mainstream medicine, or orthodox medicine. In Western countries, other types or approaches to medicine are referred to as complementary medicine or alternative medicine. Here I'll be talking mostly about drugs with respect to Western medicine. Surgery is also a part of Western medicine, but of course isn't exclusive to Western medicine. Surgery has been around for several thousand years longer than Western medicine, at least. Thus, for example, while people in Chinese societies underwent surgery using acupuncture as an anesthetic for many hundreds of years, people in European societies underwent surgery clinging to the pseudo-scientific notion that a swig or two of whiskey would kill the pain. You can probably imagine the muffled screams. So, where Dave Farina lives, in the United States, Western medicine is mainstream medicine. The United States accounts for over 45% of the global pharmaceutical market and 6 of the 10 largest pharmaceutical companies. These companies wield incredible political power in America and are known to have many influential politicians and other public figures in their pockets. None of this is a secret or anything new. The drug companies naturally have it in their interest to disregard any approach to medical treatment that doesn't include them. In this, they have loyal friends in the American skeptics movement, which I'll talk about in a moment. Where I live, in Taiwan, there are 2 mainstream systems of medicine, Chinese medicine and Western medicine. Both are government subsidized and available at little or no cost through the National Health Insurance Scheme. Most people use both systems of medicine at some time or other. Generally speaking, Chinese medicine is preferred as a preventative medicine, or to treat chronic ailments that no longer respond well to Western medicine. And Western medicine is preferred where more urgent intervention is needed. But this is a generalization. Some people will use both kinds of medicine together for the same ailment, and at other times you may have a straightforward choice, such as existed for people who contracted COVID-19. They could take, and still can, for example, a course of Paxlovid, a Western medicine, or they could take a course of Qingguan Yihao, a Chinese medicine. Both forms of medicine were, and are, approved by the government as effective in treating COVID. The American skeptics community is a group of arrogant and ignorant activists who take it upon themselves to discredit anything they feel is unscientific, as if they were the ultimate arbiters of everything scientific. They've been around for around 3 decades now, inspiring similar movements in Australia and Britain. Their standard bearer is James Randi. Formerly a washed-up conjurer and clown, Randi's career received a huge boost from a publicity stunt he pulled in which he offered $1 million to anyone who could prove psychic abilities to him, with him deciding the criteria for a successful display as he went along. Now, skepticism is a good thing. If we weren't skeptical, we would take the things that tricksters like James Randi say and do at face value. But taking a closer look at the words and deeds of those in the so-called skeptics movement, particularly its original American contingent, it soon becomes evident that these people are not genuine skeptics. They're militant dogmatists on a mission to force their opinions on the world at large. The notion that they support scientific method is only partly true. They fervently support scientific method, but only when the results of experiments bear out what they already know to be true or believe to be true. When they don't, they cry foul and claim that there's something wrong with the experiments themselves. In this, to draw an analogy with the world of politics, they're like those politicians who advocate democratic principles such as free and fair elections, only until they lose an election, and then they claim, without putting forward any proof, that the elections were rigged. Americans don't have to look far to find this kind of politician. So, in order not to confuse these people with genuine skeptics, I won't call them skeptics. Militant dogmatists is a bit of a mouthful, so I'll settle for pseudo-skeptics. Pseuds for short. Dave Farina is an Italian-American who runs a science-oriented YouTube channel called Professor Dave Explains. The channel is, for the most part, very educational and informative, but when he moves from fact to opinion in his videos, he also quickly moves from science to scientism. In his zeal, he often makes overly broad, exaggerated statements in favour of science. For example, he describes mathematics as the language of the universe itself, and claims that mathematical truths have their own existence independent of humans. How were those truths expressed or manifested in all the billions of years that the universe existed before humans came along and constructed mathematics in the last mere few thousand years? And if they weren't expressed or manifested before humans came along, how would you know they were there? Come to that, even if they were expressed or manifested, how would you know? Anyway, I'm glad the universe now has a language courtesy of the all-important humans, and can finally communicate with us through it. When it comes to medicine, Dave is firmly in the camp of the aforementioned skeptics, and rallies against all forms of what Americans call alternative medicine as bogus, and their practitioners as snake oil merchants. And, like the American skeptics community in general, he presents any non-mainstream theory as conspiracy theory, which is one of their favourite tactics to discredit any given theory they don't like. And in this, his logic sometimes unravels. For example, on the subject of the COVID-19 lab leak theory, which he describes as the least ridiculous of those conspiracy theories he presents, he asks, how could this virus be considered a biological weapon? And then goes on to point out that its similarity to other coronaviruses doesn't mean it was made in the lab, as if that means that it couldn't have been intended as a weapon. He then goes on to point out that it was affecting every nation on Earth, as if that proved that it wasn't an accidental leak or an intended biological weapon, when it could just as easily be taken as a proof it was. I wrote to Dave to point out that this least ridiculous theory has always been mainstream in Taiwan. The content of that email you can see here. However, the most interesting thing about Professor Dave Explains is not what Dave explains in terms of science, nor what he explains in terms of his opinions. It's what he doesn't explain, or at least doesn't explain in a way that would ensure all viewers could know and understand. The miscellaneous category is tucked away in a corner and obviously not part of the main presentations. In the miscellaneous category, playlist titled Ask Professor Dave, the second video is called Are You a Real Professor? Only if you watch this video at least 2/3 of the way through will you know with certainty that Professor Dave is not a professor at all, and at least at the time his video was made, which was 5 years ago now, just a regular bachelor's degree holder who had twice failed in his attempts to get a master's degree. In the video, he claimed to be in the process of taking yet another master's degree, but whether he successfully secured that or not isn't clear. There's a very popular YouTuber, Professor Dave, Dave, is definitely well aware that most people don't watch videos all the way through, and he seems to have made good use of this phenomena here. His introductory video is over 2.5 minutes long, and in it he makes no mention at all of the fact that he isn't a professor, has never taught as a professor, and isn't even qualified to teach as a professor, which is something that should be stated clearly right from the get-go. Now, I personally couldn't care less about his academic qualifications, but there are people who could. It doesn't take a genius to understand why Dave doesn't make it clear up front that he's not a professor. It doesn't even take a professor. A professor of psychology, perhaps. Certainly, many of his regular viewers are not aware that he isn't a professor, just as I wasn't. I watched maybe 24 videos before, in an idle moment, I scrolled down to the miscellaneous category. And certainly some of those viewers would feel they had been duped if they did know, and would regard Dave as a bogus professor. Anyway, that's enough of a basis for understanding what this 2-part video is all about. In the second half, I'll relate my own experience of the failures of Western medicine.